The champagne glasses clinked as my mother-in-law, Patricia, celebrated what she thought was her greatest victory, to my son's new beginning. She announced so our entire family gathered at Le Maison, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. I stood quietly by their table, dressed in my waitress uniform, watching the scene unfold. "Sarah, dear," Patricia turned to me with that familiar smirk. "I suppose we should thank you for serving us tonight. It's fitting, really. This is where you belong, serving your betters." My hands didn't shake as I poured more champagne into her glass. 5 years of marriage to her son James had taught me to expect the worst from Patricia Sterling. But even I hadn't anticipated this level of cruelty. "Mother," James protested weakly, not meeting my eyes. "Maybe we should discuss this privately." "Nonsense." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "Everyone needs to know. James is finally marrying someone worthy of the Sterling name, Sophia Chen, the daughter of that famous chef everyone's talking about. No more pretending that a mere waitress could ever fit into our world." I carefully set down the champagne bottle, noting how my sister-in-law, Emma, couldn't quite hide her gleeful smile. The entire Sterling family sat around that table, watching my public humiliation with varying degrees of satisfaction and discomfort. "Would you like to see the dessert menu?" I asked professionally, my voice steady. Patricia laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "Oh, you're still trying to maintain dignity? How quaint. Tell me, how does it feel knowing my son is upgrading to someone who actually understands fine dining instead of just serving it?" I could have ended their celebration right then. One word from me and the maitre d' would have thrown them out. After all, I didn't just work at La Maison. I owned it, along with 12 other high-end restaurants across the country. But patience had always been my strongest virtue. "I hope you enjoy your evening," I replied simply, turning to walk away. "Wait," James called out, finally finding his voice. "Sarah, we should talk about this. I didn't want you to find out this way." I paused, looking at my husband of 5 years. The man who promised to stand by me through everything, who'd sworn his mother's disapproval wouldn't matter. The man who'd apparently been seeing Sophia Chen behind my back for months. "There's nothing to talk about," I said quietly. "Your mother's right about one thing. This is exactly where I belong." Let them think I meant as a waitress. Let them believe their assumptions about my position in life. I'd learned long ago that people see what they expect to see. Walking back to the kitchen, I passed Marcel, my head chef. He raised an eyebrow questioningly, having witnessed the entire scene. "Madame, shall I?" "Not yet," I murmured. "Let them finish their meal." I'd inherited my first restaurant at 25 when my grandmother passed away. She'd built Le Maison from nothing, teaching me everything she knew about the restaurant business while allowing me to work my way up from dishwasher to waitress to manager. "Never let them see everything you are," she'd always said. "Keep something in reserve." When I married James at 28, I'd already expanded to 3 locations. Now, at 33, my restaurant empire was worth millions, but I kept that quiet, allowing Patricia to believe I was just a waitress who'd somehow trapped her precious son. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "Can we please talk about this? I know it's a shock, but Sophia understands our world in a way you never could." I screenshot the message, adding it to my growing file of evidence. Another buzz. "Mother says you can keep the apartment we've been living in. She's being generous, considering everything." The apartment they thought was a rental, but was actually one of my properties. The same building where Sophia Chen currently lived in a penthouse apartment, paying rent to my management company. I called my lawyer, the one I consulted 3 months ago when I first noticed James's suspicious behavior. "Deanna, it's time. Remember those papers we discussed? The ones documenting his affairs and financial misconduct. Already prepared. When do you want me to file?" "Monday morning. And Deanna, make sure the Sterling family's accounts are flagged at all my restaurants. Effective immediately." I ended the call and opened my laptop, reviewing the security footage from Sophia's penthouse lobby. There it was, James entering at various hours over the past months, always when he claimed to be working late. Each visit documented, time-stamped, and saved. Patricia's voice carried across the restaurant. "Finally, our James will have a wife who appreciates fine cuisine, who understands wine pairings and proper table settings. No more embarrassing moments at charity galas." I smiled, remembering all those galas where I played the role of the unsophisticated waitress-turned-wife. watching Patricia criticize my every move while I signed checks funding those very events through my charitable foundation. My phone buzzed again, this time from my sister-in-law. You didn't really think you keep him, did you? A waitress in the Sterling family. Mother's been working on this match with the Chens for months. Perfect. More evidence of premeditation. I typed a quick message to my restaurant manager. Flag any reservations under Chen or Sterling at all locations. Full documentation of visits, charges, and security footage. The response came immediately. Already done, boss. Want us to cancel their current reservation? No, I replied. Let them enjoy their celebration. It's going to be their last meal at any of our establishments. Through the kitchen doors, I could hear Patricia regaling the table with stories of Sophia's accomplishments, her culinary degree, her father's famous restaurants in Hong Kong, her understanding of fine wines. What Patricia didn't know was that Sophia's father had approached me 6 months ago about selling his struggling restaurant group. The papers would be signed next week, adding his 4 locations to my portfolio. I wondered how he'd react when he learned his future son-in-law's soon-to-be ex-wife was his new boss. My phone buzzed with an alert from my banking app. James had just tried to use our joint credit card to pay for the evening celebration, a card I'd quietly canceled an hour ago. I watched through the kitchen window as he frowned at his phone, then pulled out another card, and another. Each declined, thanks to my careful financial planning. Is there a problem with the payment? I asked, approaching their table one last time. Patricia's face reddened. James, what's going on? I don't understand, he muttered, pulling out his phone to check his banking app. All my cards are declining. How embarrassing, I said softly. Would you like me to ask the manager to come over? Yes. Patricia snapped. This is ridiculous. We're the Sterling family. We don't have payment problems. I nodded and walked away, but instead of fetching the manager, I returned to my office. Through the security feed, I watched as Marcel, my head chef, approached their table. Madam Sterling, he said formally, I regret to inform you that your family's accounts have been flagged in our system. We cannot accept payment from you at this time. This is outrageous. Patricia stood up, her voice rising. Do you know who we are? Call the owner immediately. The owner is already aware of the situation. Marcel replied calmly. In fact, she's the one who flagged your accounts. The owner? James looked confused. What does the owner have to do with our cards declining? I picked up my phone and typed a quick message to the family group chat James had created to announce his news. Since you're having trouble with the bill, I'll take care of it. Consider it my wedding gift to James and Sophia. After all, that's what family does, right? I watched through the camera as phones buzzed around the table. Patricia grabbed hers first, her face contorting as she read my message. What is she talking about? She demanded. She's just a waitress. I pressed send on another message. Oh, and Patricia, you might want to check who owns the building where Sophia lives. The same person who owns this restaurant, and 12 others across the country. The silence at their table was absolute as the implications sank in. That's impossible, James whispered, but I could see the dawning horror on his face as he finally put the pieces together. My comfortable lifestyle despite my waitress salary, my extensive knowledge of fine dining that I carefully hid in, my quiet confidence in the face of his mother's constant criticism. My phone buzzed one last time that evening, from James. We need to talk. Now. I walked out of my office and through the kitchen, straightening my waitress uniform. It was time to greet my guests properly. Sarah. James stood up as I approached their table, his face pale. You own the maison. Among other things, I replied calmly, removing my waitress apron. Marcel, please ensure the Sterling family's meal is added to my personal account. Patricia's face had turned an interesting shade of red. This is some kind of trick. You're just a waitress. We've watched you serve tables for years. Actually, Mother, I said, emphasizing the title she'd never let me use before, you watched me manage my business. There's a difference. Emma, my sister-in-law, was frantically Googling on her phone. Her eyes widened. La Maison Group, 13 high-end restaurants. Founder Sarah Chin Montgomery. She looked up at me in shock. Montgomery, your grandmother's name. The same grandmother you mocked for being just a cook at our wedding, I reminded her. She built this restaurant empire from nothing. I've spent the last 5 years expanding it. James sank back into his chair. All those times you stayed late at work. I was running my business, yes, just like all those times you claimed to be working late, but were actually visiting Sophia in the penthouse apartment she rents from my property management company. Patricia stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. You've been spying on my son. No, I've been monitoring my property. The security cameras in my buildings are there for everyone's safety. I smiled pleasantly. They've captured some very interesting footage over the past few months. You had no right, James began, but I cut him off. I had every right to protect my interests, especially after you started embezzling from our joint accounts to fund your affair. The color drained from his face. I didn't. The transfers to a secret account under your mother's name? The cash withdrawals that coincidentally matched the deposits into Sophia's account. My forensic accountant has documented everything. Marcel appeared at my side with a tablet. The papers you requested, madame. I took the tablet and turned it toward the table. These are screenshots of your text messages planning this little announcement tonight. Notice the timestamp on Patricia's message. Everything's arranged. The Chin girl is ready to play her part. Sarah will be working the dinner shift as usual. Patricia's hands shook as she reached for her wine glass. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can prove everything, including the fact that you've known about James' affair for months and helped orchestrate this public humiliation. I swiped to the next screen. These are records of your meetings with Sophia's father, planning what you thought would be an advantageous business merger through marriage. James leaned forward. Sarah, please, we can talk about this privately. Like you talked privately with Sophia in her apartment? Or like you talked privately with your mother about how to minimize the divorce settlement you thought you'd have to pay your waitress wife. Emma was still scrolling through her phone. The La Maison Group's estimated worth. Oh my God. Yes, I nodded. Quite a bit more than the Sterling family fortune. Speaking of which, I turned to Patricia. You might want to reconsider that charity gala you're hosting next month. Your usual venue has suddenly become unavailable. You can't do that. Patricia sputtered. The invitations have already gone out. I own the venue. I can do whatever I want. I pulled up another document on the tablet. Just like I can do this. James peered at the screen, his face growing even paler. What is that? Divorce papers. My lawyer will file them first thing Monday morning. They include complete documentation of your affair, your financial misconduct, and your mother's involvement in both. You'll never prove. Patricia began, but I held up my hand. Every restaurant where you met Sophia, every hotel room charged to our joint account, every transfer of money, every text message, every security camera footage. I have it all. The silence around the table was deafening. You know, I continued conversationally, I always wondered why you hated me so much, Patricia. Was it really because you thought I was just a waitress? Or was it because deep down, you knew I was more successful than your entire family? This is blackmail, she hissed. No, this is business. Something you clearly don't understand as well as you think you do. I turned to James. By the way, Sophia's father is selling his restaurant group. Care to guess who's buying it? James's jaw dropped. You're the buyer? The papers will be signed next week. I imagine that might make future family dinners a bit awkward. I smiled at Patricia, assuming of course that Sophia still wants to marry into the Sterling family once she learns her father's new boss is James' ex-wife. Patricia grabbed her purse. We're leaving. James, come on. Oh, please stay, I said. Your credit cards may be declining, but as I said, this meal is on me. Consider it a parting gift. My phone buzzed with a text. I glanced at it and couldn't help but laugh. Oh, and Patricia, you might want to check your own account balance. It seems your financial advisor just received some very interesting documentation about your involvement in James's embezzlement. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and media speculation. The society pages couldn't get enough of the story. Successful restaurant owner takes down cheating husband's family empire. Sophia, to her credit, broke off the engagement as soon as she learned the truth. Her father was surprisingly understanding when I met with him to finalize the sale of his restaurants. I should have known, he said, shaking his head. The way you analyzed the financials, the questions you asked. No waitress would have that knowledge. Patricia and James tried to fight the divorce settlement, but the evidence was overwhelming. Their attempts to claim part ownership of my business were dismissed immediately. The judge was particularly unimpressed by their attempts to paint me as a manipulative spy who had somehow trapped James into marriage. "Let me get this straight," the judge had said, reviewing the documents. "You're claiming Mrs. Montgomery deceived you by successfully running her own business while allowing you to underestimate her." The Sterling family's social standing took a massive hit. Patricia's charity gala had to be canceled when every high-end venue in the city suddenly became unavailable for that date. James found his business contacts mysteriously reluctant to meet with him, especially at any restaurants. Emma tried to apologize, claiming she'd never known about James' affair. I sent her screenshots of her own text messages encouraging him to pursue Sophia. She didn't contact me again. 1 year after that fateful dinner, I sat in my office at La Maison, reviewing plans for my newest restaurant. The door opened and Marcel entered with a familiar face. "Ms. Chen," I greeted Sophia. "What can I do for you?" She shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to apologize. I never knew about your connection to the restaurant group. When James and his mother approached me, you saw an opportunity, I finished for her. I understand. Business is business. That's actually why I'm here, she said, pulling out a folder. I have a business proposition, a new restaurant concept. I'd like you to consider it. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Even after everything? Especially after everything. You turned a single restaurant into an empire while letting everyone underestimate you. That's the kind of mentor I need. I thought about my grandmother, about all the lessons she taught me about business and life. Sometimes, I said, opening the folder, the best revenge is success. And sometimes, the best success comes from unexpected places. Does that mean you'll look at my proposal? I'll do better than that, I said. I'll teach you what my grandmother taught me. Never let them see everything you are. Keep something in reserve. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. James is getting married again. I expect you to release the venue restrictions. I showed the message to Sophia, who laughed, still trying to control everything. Some people never learn, I replied, then typed, "Congratulations. I wish James and his new bride all the success they deserve. By the way, I just bought the company he works for. Expect restructuring announcements soon." I turned back to Sophia's proposal. "Now tell me about this restaurant concept of yours." The society pages love that story too. Ruthless restaurant mogul mentor's former rival proves success is the best revenge. But they missed the real story. It wasn't about revenge at all. It was about power, not the power Patricia had craved, built on name and status, but real power built on hard work and careful planning. My grandmother would have been proud. 5 years later, I hosted a grand opening for my 20th restaurant. Patricia and James weren't invited, of course. But I made sure they received photos of the event. Of me cutting the ribbon, of Sophia, now my top restaurant developer, presenting our expansion plans, of their former social circle celebrating our success. James sent one last text. "I should have known. All those years, you were so much more than you seemed." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. My success spoke louder than any words could. The framed waitress apron in my office tells the story better than I ever could. Below it, a simple plaque reads, "Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting better." And beside it, my grandmother's favorite saying, "Let them underestimate you. Just make sure they're wrong."